And I call this video conference meeting of the Bryan Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members are present via video conference or telephone. That this meeting has been duly called and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. This meeting is being conducted via video conference pursuant to Governor Abbott's temporary suspension of meeting temporary suspension of open meetings law issued on March 16th, 2020 in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The meeting will be audible to the board and public and allow for two-way communications for the board and district administration. The public has been provided telephonic and video conference access to this meeting. So welcome. And I believe I've heard and seen everybody on the call except for Felicia. Is Felicia here?
She recently, we were just notified she had a conflict with work.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to confirm. So everybody else is present. In accordance with Governor Abbott's temporary suspension of open meetings laws issued on March 16th, 2020, the board will allow public comment, citizen participation to be made in an alternative format. The alternative format required that those wishing to address the board on either an item on the agenda or a non-agenda topic must have sent the comments via email to BISD_digitalmeeting@bryanisd.org 10 minutes prior to this meeting. There were no emails received, so at this time we'll move into committee updates. And first up is the superintendent update.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see you, I guess, just a little bit differently, but I'll give you an update on a few things going on. And first and foremost, though, today marks the beginning of Teacher Appreciation Week. And I just want to say to you that I don't think I could ever imagine being more appreciative of the teaching force that we have in Bryan than now. They have literally self-taught, been required to change their entire way of teaching, and they have done an enormous effort and amazing job, and I'm just very proud of them, as I know you are. They are reaching out to families, and the greatest thing is that they're caring about that whole child, not just the academics. We talk about relationships before rigor and grace before grades, that it is about the whole child. Every family is in a different situation throughout this. And I see example after example of the things that our teachers are doing to keep them smiling, to keep them laughing, to keep them connected, and of course to learn. So I just wanted to make that statement to you that we are all just very grateful for the quality of the teachers that we have in Bryan ISD. A few other things to let you know, as I know you're aware from our communications last week, we did make the decision to move our graduations to the end of June from the May Memorial Day weekend dates. And we have July as a backup as well, but right now we're focusing and hopeful that we'll get a little bit more guidance, but that we'll be able to follow those, whatever those guidelines are, and make those a reality at Merrill Green Stadium. Also, yesterday we reached a all-time high for Schoology students logged in. We hit the 95% mark, and so that is quite something. I know the instructional committee may want to elaborate a little bit on some of the details that they heard when they were given breakdowns and information last week in our committee. But we really just feel like that's very strong, and of course our staff, our assistant principals, everyone is reaching out to those that have not yet participated. And then lastly, I'll just tell you the things that we're working on. We have subcommittees for subcommittees and lots of different groups going on about the right way to close out the year, how we get students up to return items that they may have. They may have band instruments, athletic uniforms, library books, but also to get things that may be in their lockers and their desks. And we've got a team of principals that are leading that charge for all of those details. We also have groups working on what does summer school look like. Again, we have no guidance from the state on that yet, but we are looking at various scenarios and how we might be able to bring back to you a plan. And Ms. Carabine is also leading the charge at re-examining the school calendar. And perhaps there's some ways to regain some instructional days during the 2021 school year. So expect those things to be coming, over the next few weeks, and particularly for our night meeting in May. But anyway, from my chair, I just want you to know I'm really proud of our team and very proud of the teachers, and especially want to honor them this week.
Great. Thank you. If there's no questions, we'll move down into the instructional committee update.
So there were several of us on that, but I can get started. We met on April 23rd to get an update on instruction. And as you've already heard, we're now up to 95%. I think at that time we were close to 92. And all of our, we got the breakdown by campus. All campuses were very engaged in that. We heard from technology regarding the number of laptops that have been distributed. Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think close to 5,000 have been deployed.
Yes, ma'am. We're at 5,050, I think.
Okay. So with 95% of our students engaging in Schoology, I mean, I've complimented our staff and our parents in the past on that. It's truly amazing that our children are able to be engaged in that way. So that's very exciting. What am I forgetting, Doug?
Well, I was just going to mention that Dr. Whitbeck has been, when she talks about the participation or engagement rate on Schoology, she always mentions that that's not necessarily students who are turning in their work. So we got a report on that as well. And I don't know where that is since the 23rd, but at that time, I think the worst case I remember was about 15% who were not engaged, which meant that if there was 90%, 91% on Schoology, and out of those 90, well, the denominator was still the total number of students. So if it was 85%, even in that worst case, I think that's still pretty good engagement. As a matter of fact, I'd be surprised if students were that engaged when they're sitting in the classrooms. Couple of other things that were of interest to me. I asked Julie in this meeting and in the next one, the finance as well, about the hotspots we're putting out. I was really impressed by your maps of the clouds around each school that you sent out to all of us. But we're doing what we can to get access to places where families may have, a little more trouble getting to it, and I really appreciate that. And I've looked a little about how other places are doing that around the state. A lot of them, are setting up school bus hotspots and so forth. But we are certainly, from what I can see, there may be other schools doing similar things, but we are certainly leading the way on that from what I've seen. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, one other thing I wanted to add is that our plan in terms of how we were rolling out grading, was featured by TEA as a potential model for other districts to follow. So that's really a compliment to the work of our staff and making sure that all of our T's were crossed and I's dotted on that.
One other thing on the success of the rollout, I don't know what all of the I guess components that contributed to the success, but Dr. Ibarra, likes to point out that going with the online access first, and then kind of forcing that issue, and then trying to patch the other the people who absolutely had no way to get online, you know, that came later. And I just wanted to tell her that I mentioned that to a friend of mine who was a teacher, and her response was, "Oh, absolutely. There's no question that was true. That decision, you know, promoted us to that 91 and now 95% engagement rate."
Great. So, all right, we'll move straight on down into finance.
I can try to remember what I remember. We did get a report from Kevin about revenue, and it was and expenditures, and there were some bright spots. I think we're kind of close to wiping out most of the deficit that we were concerned about. We did get a little information about how ADA would be calculated in this age of the pandemic, which was kind of just using past information, not trying to come up with some new formula. So that was actually, I think, good news. And of course, our utilities are going to be lower, so that reduce our expenses to some degree. I think we talked about girls' restrooms and the locker area at Bryan High, at the Merrill Green Stadium, and the problems with those, and the need to move forward with getting those fixed up so that they're more acceptable and hopefully durable. Press box at Rudder, moving forward with the next stage on that. I don't remember exactly where we ended up as far as what we're ready to move. But anyway, I think the idea was to go ahead and continue that process of getting that constructed. And we got information about, I think we're getting I believe that's the project that we're getting a discount on some of the architectural fees because of being a similar design to a previous press box. Let's see, track at Davila, bad shape. Kind of got the bad news that it's really not resurfaceable as it is, so we're going to have to, basically take out the track and start over. And so there was some discussion about certainly trying to get some assurance that it's going to be done in a durable fashion that will be hopefully where the base will stand up better, and we can just get it resurfaced whenever that's necessary without having to get the base redone. And then last thing on my list was just the discussion about the sale of the Travis ESC building and the status of that, which I believe is on the agenda here for today. So, and I'm sure there were a few other things, but that was the things that I quickly scribbled on my list here.
We talked about the cost of salary increases for most of the staff that are, non-teaching staff, and then what the cost of the teachers' step increases would be. I have a note here, audit of state controller, but I don't remember what that's about.
Yes, sir. That they did every year. They could do an audit of the comptroller's certified values. As our appraisal district does the appraisals of all our properties in our district, and then that goes to the comptroller, and they do some other calculations, and they come up with their own certified value, which eventually becomes, the certified value for all intent and purposes. But every year there's a law firm we have that audits that, and they just finished the 2017 audit of the comptroller's certified values, and that will net us, the district, approximately $557,000 in additional state funding because of the adjustment for that. So that was the good item that we added on there.
That accounts for why I made a note of it.
Yeah, agreed.
Anyway, I don't know, you know, how far it's not on today's agenda to talk about increases yet. So I don't know what kind of detail we need to go into on that. We can wait.
We're just working on various scenarios to be able to bring back to you. I think Mr. Besaw is also working on getting some additional data. We can kind of see exactly what we're projected for, but I would predict that we'll be back to you. I don't think by the mid-May meeting, but I would say June with some thoughts on salary.
And I wanted to just correct or modify one thing David said. He mentioned the restrooms. Those are the restrooms near the competition gym at Bryan High. They're not at Merrill Green.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yes, as you walk into the main gym. Yes.
That's all I have.
One thing I can add to that, if I could. We also talked about all of the programs for disaster relief, and I just wanted to make sure everybody's aware we're pursuing all of those avenues that we can. For example, the FEMA, we've already applied for a request for public assistance, has been submitted and accepted, so we're gathering the data to work on getting some of that reimbursements. CARES Act, there's U.S. Department of Education grants that we'll be working with TEA on. Is another avenue to recoup some of these expenditures from that are additional due to COVID, and just other ones that are coming across. For example, the instructional continuity grant that came forward, approximately $56,000. So I mean, you know, not huge, but it has helped us buy some of this technology and different things that we're using for ongoing. So that's the only other thing I thought that I just wanted to mention to make sure everybody's aware that we're pursuing all of those avenues that are available.
Thank you. I'm sorry I overlooked that. And I assume that, I think we talked about some of those hotspots and things like that. We may be able to get some funds back for, since that's obviously a response to the pandemic issue we're dealing with. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Some good committee work that's continuing, and I know we have some additional committees scheduled, including a technology committee that is about to be scheduled. It hasn't been scheduled yet, Fran. So it will be coming quickly. All right, so moving forward, we'll move straight into business services. And first up is what Mr. Stasny mentioned, was to consider approval of the resolution approving sale of the Travis Education Support Center.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. McCall. This is a process for the sale of the Travis Education Support Center at 101 North Texas, the old administration building. And just to kind of take us back a little, the whole process started back in February 17th when the board authorized the sale of that building as surplus property. The first step we took on then was offering the property, which is required by law, to any open enrollment charter school that's within the district boundaries, either wholly or partly within our boundaries. That took place in late February and early March. There were no offers received in response to that offer. So the next step was to go advertise the property for public bid, which took place in early April. Was actually advertised twice on that, and site evaluation offered to the public as well for anyone that wanted to see it in April. Bids were actually opened last Wednesday, April 29th, and the district did receive one bid that met the minimum requirements to be considered. Today, we're bringing forth a resolution to recommend that the board accept the bid and approve the sale of the property. And the resolution as attached would authorize the superintendent and her designee to negotiate the final real estate sales contract in accordance with the bid package, and then to present that final contract back to the board at the next available meeting after that's finalized.
Well, I'll go ahead and move approval of the proposed resolution approving the sale of the Travis Education Support Center located 101 North Texas Avenue, Bryan, Texas 77803, surface estate only, and all actions contemplated within the resolution.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Stasny, a second by Dr. Harland. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion approved. And with that, we'll move down into human resources. Consider approval of final recommendation for professional contracts.
Good afternoon. This is the last batch of employee contracts that I'd like to present to the board this afternoon. These employees are people that we were hoping that they could get into a testing center to get their certification completed, but because testing centers have been closed, the state, the commissioner, I should say, has given relief to these people and granted them 1 more year of a probationary certificate so they can continue on in their journey as a teacher in Bryan ISD with a certificate for this coming year and the understanding that they'll have to get their testing done once those testing centers open back up.
So as far as all of these, that the only thing that kept them was not being able to take the test, right? I mean, it would have been the normal process for them to go through.
Right, you know.
They weren't behind to begin with.
No.
I move approval of the recommendation of the superintendent to renew and issue non-chapter 21 contracts, probationary contracts, and term contracts for the 2020-2021 school year for professional staff.
Second.
I have a motion by Dr. Harland, a second by Dr. Warneberger. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries. All right, and that will bring us into a couple of items for technology services. The first is consider approval of COVID-19 missed school day waiver.
Hi, good afternoon. One of the recommendations from TEA is for us to pursue a missed school day waiver from March the 16th until the end of the school year. And that allows us to cover all of the days that we've missed so that we still meet our 75,600 minute requirement. So this kind of was helpful for districts to not have to figure out how to make up days or how many extra minutes had to be used. So it was really nice that that TEA came out really early in this whole process to say, submit your missed school day waiver. And so our DEIC committee actually pre-approved missed school day waivers for us back in September. We were trying to be proactive, having learned many things from Hurricane Harvey, where we had to do a lot of different waivers. So we were trying to be proactive. So that part is done, and we bring this to you today to seek your approval for us to submit this missed school day waiver to TEA. So
I move approval of the COVID-19 missed school day waiver is presented.
Second.
thank you. The next waiver.
Wait. We have a.
I'm sorry.
I have a motion by Dr. Warneberger, and I believe a second by Ms. Dwayne.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion carries. And now we'll move into the second waiver.
So sorry. Okay. The next waiver is also coming out of the COVID-19 closure. It's the waiver that's necessary to cover seniors that may not be able to complete the required CPR instruction training. Right now, our counselors have put together the CPR course that's over the content that was needed for seniors, and it is in Schoology. And there have been quite a few seniors that have taken advantage of that. But we know that there could be situations where the student isn't able to access Schoology. And so TEA has offered this CPR waiver that we can apply for that. And then it would cover any students any seniors that have not completed that. And so if this is approved, then we can go ahead and drop in a date for completion, like as the end of the school year, and then that date would print on the seniors transcript.
I move approval of the COVID-19 CPR waiver request as presented.
Second.
A motion by Dr. Warneberger, a second by Dr. Harlan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, and thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and that will move us down into local governance. And first up is revisions to board policy EIE local.
Good afternoon. This afternoon, I'm bringing to you a revision to our retention and promotion policy for students. We actually had a group of campus administrators and district staff begin meeting this past fall to review board policy EIE local. Previously, the policy was arranged by grade levels and by school levels. And since realignment, it really hasn't been adjusted to reflect the grade level configuration that we currently have. But we also wanted to look more at the policy in terms of what schools were actually doing in line with the policy, to make sure that we were giving the students every possible avenue to show their demonstration of mastery of learning. And so the team began meeting in the fall. We took it to the district leadership team, which is comprised of directors and principals, got their feedback. The committee also formed subcommittees with their campus staff, so teachers had input through those subcommittees. And we looked at what are the different policies out there and what do we like about those policies in relation to our own. And as we kind of started looking at all the policies, we realized we didn't want them arranged by grade level configurations, but we wanted a parent to be able to go to the policy and say, okay, if I have a third grader, what does it take for my child to be promoted to fourth grade? And so for each kiddo, you could look at your child's grade level and know exactly what it was for the next grade level and arrange the policy so that it was more user-friendly for our parents and for our families. And so that group met over the course of the semester and actually came up with a revision that we were going to bring toward the board this summer. But in light of our current circumstance, it makes a lot of sense to bring it forward now because it does something that we've always wanted to do, which is, I think Dr. Whitbeck always says it best, but you put the brightest minds closest to the situation to make the determination. And that's especially true in terms of a child and whether or not they should be promoted and retained, and if promoted, what supports are needed. So the policy before you is arranged from a grade level to grade level perspective, and it does require the student to pass the 4 core subjects and maintain an overall 70 average in all courses, noting the importance of our fine arts and our PE courses and our other elective courses. But then it also gives the campus the opportunity to meet and decide what to do for the student in the coming year, and that the entire academic record can be looked at. You'll also notice that the policy now stipulates you must meet state attendance requirements. And while we know we're a district of innovation, we still want kids to be present. And so that needs to go back to the campus in terms of an attendance review committee, which they all have in place, as well as what does that mean for promotion and or possible retention. And so there's a clause with each grade level that simply says for students who do not meet the full promotion criteria, the following shall be considered to determine the final grade placement: the academic performance, any standardized assessments, permanent records, and other pertinent student information that might shed light on the circumstances for the child and what supports are necessary to ensure the success of the child. This aligns with our revised grading guidelines and putting that committee type of feel to each grade level's promotion. Obviously, if the campus was considering a retention, the parent would also be involved, which is another part of our process internally. But today before you, the major changes are just clarifying it and rearranging the language so that it's a grade level to grade level promotion, along with a committee review of the students' needs to ensure their success.
So is it safe to say that there are not any substantive changes? That it's just kind of a clarification and reorganization?
Yes, sir. I would say that's a true statement. If anything, I would say we do require the 4 core now, where before it was always math and reading. and then one of the other of social studies and science, but the committee felt it important to make it all 4 core, and then the proposed committee, the policy review committee. And then should a child not meet one of those, that's where the grade campus review committee would come into play to look at the nature of the child and how close they were to passing and what supports they would need in that subject in the coming year to be promoted.
So when a parent wants to go look up, hypothetically, a second grade promotion, they're not going to go to the policy. We're going to have that someplace else convenient for them, right?
Well, the grading guidelines do stipulate, what you need to pass a class, and those are in there along with the student handbook.
Right.
And this mirrors that, yes, sir.
Well,
But the policy is there to fall back on. Mm-hmm.
Right, I understand, and they should be exactly the same. My only comment is a procedural or organizational practice. When you put this much information, especially that's repeated into a policy, I would put that into an appendix so that but you can still, what the public sees in terms, it would be exactly the same thing and organized specifically for them. But I mean, there's not anything wrong with this other than there's a lot of language that's repeated many times.
We did have concerns with that, but in looking at several other district policies across the state of Texas, many of them arrange it in this manner. And so we started to kind of follow that same structure. The committee liked the simplicity of it, but certainly the first place a parent would go would be the student handbook and those sorts of documents to guide them in what's required for promotion.
I may be biased because we had a workshop once in writing policies, and I got the award for writing the one that was the briefest.
Succinct is also nice, yes.
Good thing.
I move approval of the revisions to board policy EIE local as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Waller, a second by Mr. Stasny. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, the board will now convene in closed session to discuss items as allowed by sections 551.071 and 551.074 of the Texas Government Code. In order to go into closed session, the members of the public who are accessing this meeting via telephone or video conference will either be placed on hold or be placed in a waiting room while the board meets in closed session in accordance with the applicable laws. While the board is in closed session, members of the public may remain on the regular meeting telephone line or the video conference link that was provided for the general public while waiting for the board to reconvene in open session. Upon concluding the closed session, members of the public will be removed from hold or the waiting room and allowed to access this regular meeting video conference once again, and the open session will reconvene. No voting will take place in this closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussion in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in the open meeting. It is now 12:33. All right. The board will now reconvene in open session. Please note that there is the board reconvened in open session. It is now 1:39. No action was taken in closed session. Please note, board members, I did mute everybody. So we have these motions. You may need to remute yourself or unmute yourself. We'll bring up action number 1.
I move approval of Rachel Layton as the principal of Rudder High School as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Dr. Harland, second by Mr. Stasny. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Congratulations. Action 2. This is a motion on the third resolution.
You muted me.
Oh.
I move approval of the third resolution of the Bryan ISD Board of Trustees in response to the COVID-19 pandemic as presented with the omission of section 3.
Second.
And discussion? I think I'll go ahead and note that we removed the section 3 because it was redundant with the prior. As noted, it was redundant. So if at that point I have a motion by Dr. Warnerberger, a second by Mr. Stasny. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. And third and final action.
I move approval of the recommendation of superintendent proposed non-renewal of the term contract of Mary DeGeorge.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Stasny, a second by Dr. Warnerberger. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. And at this point, thank you very much. We are adjourned.
Once again, happy Mother's Day to all you mamas.
Thank you.